Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Transparency and Ethics. We have a very full 55 minutes. Today, we have 7 budgets to go through. Remember, these are our fee fund agencies. You had the budgets sent to you yesterday. Hopefully, if you had any questions, you've asked our research department to. We have some agencies here to testify. Some are just here for questions as well. So I'll let you know off our agenda who's who. And first up, we have the Behavioral Science Regulatory Board. Hard to say, Dayton. Good morning. So research, Dayton Lamont. Welcome to the committee, Dayton. And I'm going to set the timer for 6 minutes for each one. So we either save time or we need time. So we'll see how well we do, and I'm sure you'll be well. Thank you, Dayton.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Dayton Lamonian, Fiscal Analyst, KLRD, and I'm presenting the BSRB budget. You should have a document that says Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board at the top. And we'll go ahead and turn to page 8, which is the current year, fiscal year 2023 analysis. So on page 8, the amount approved by the 2022 legislature was $1,012,232. There were no changes to this amount prior to the agency's revised estimate. The agency requests a supplemental for legal fees of $12,200, bringing the total to $1,024,432. The governor does not recommend adoption of this supplemental request, reducing the amount back to the legislative approved amount. And I'll stand for any questions or carry on to 2023 or 2024.
Why don't you just carry on and we'll come back with questions.
Then we'll turn over to page 10. This begins with the agency's revised estimate of $1,024,432. The agency again requested contractual services for legal fees in the amount of $8,700. They requested contractual services for IT expenditures of $4,400, travel of $11,000, and other adjustments of $2,300 for a grand total of $1,050,908. And the governor does concur with the agency's revised estimate for 24. If you'll flip the page, we can move on to fiscal year 2025. This fiscal year 2025 estimate begins at $1,050,908. You see the same 3 items there in differing amounts. The legal fees in $9,592, IT expenditures of $4,500, travel of $3,000, and other adjustments of $5,800, for a total of $1,073,817 for 2025. And I'm happy to stand for any questions. Or the governor does concur.
Thank you. Do we have Senator Straub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the legal fees, those would be paid to the Attorney General's office, correct, for legal representation?
So the BSRB did have a contract with the Attorney General, and those fees had increased over the year. However, the Attorney General terminated the contract. So BSRB now has a contract with temporarily with an attorney for interim legal fees. And they've signed an agreement with the ks to use their legal department for the remainder of the year, and they're looking for long-term representation for the future. So it's just sort of an aspect of when the agency submitted their budget, things sort of changed after that time.
Okay, and that's at that same $75,000 rate?
For the current year, the amount will be less than the amount that they're requesting, yes.
Thank you.
Senator McGinn.
I guess I'm trying to understand on that topic. I don't know what page were you on? 8. Yeah, I'm on 8. Okay. So we've seen this 3 years in a row now that the Attorney General keeps raising their rate. Is that correct?
This has been an ongoing situation, yes. So they requested the increase for this year.
Is that in statute that they can raise their rate every year?
I'm not sure of the statutory basis for the Attorney General aspect of it.
I mean, it would be great if we could just raise everybody's salary every year. Everybody, all employees, every year. You know, just because we request it. So these guys are trying to, or they are looking for outside services?
So the agreement with the Attorney General was terminated after they submitted their request. So they had temporary coverage with a law firm and then a memorandum of understanding or agreement with KDADS for the remainder of 2023, looking for a long-term solution for 24 and beyond. So that you'll see that revised next year when they come back to adjust the current year, which will be 2024.
Senator Francisco.
So I'm understanding that because they terminated the agreement, they did not have to pay the $12,200. And that's why it's taken out, or did they have to make that expense?
They did not, the governor did not recommend doing that because they only paid for a portion of the year. And due to the agreements they have with KDADS and the law firm, that amount is less than the amount that they would spend.
Okay, thank you, Dayton. Hang up there in case we have more questions after we have David Fry, the Executive Director of the agency. Hello, David.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is David Fye, Executive Director for the Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board. Appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you today on the BSRB's budget. First, just wanted to clarify, the agency does not have any objection to the governor's recommendations for fiscal year 23, 24, and 25. Just to clarify that note about the Attorney General's contract, in several years past, we had received services through part of our statutory 10% contribution. All regulatory boards such as ourselves are required to provide 10% of our revenue to the State General Fund in exchange for services, and some of those include legal services. So for many years, we received those services as part of that statutory contribution. A few years back, agencies were starting to be able to charge for that separately, so we had a contract with the Attorney General's office of $75,000. Back in July of last year, the Attorney General informed us that they would be increasing their fees from $75,000 to $87,200. That was the $12,200 that you see there. And so we attempted to do contract negotiations with their agency to try to get that amount lowered. We were unsuccessful in doing that, so we did have legal services with them for the first half of the fiscal year. But about a month and a half before the end of the first half of the year, back in November 16th, they informed us they would be terminating the agreement. I understand the agency has spoken this past week concerning their own budget, and they've talked about having issues with staffing. Some of the representatives who had previously provided services to us are no longer with that agency, so I know that was probably one of the factors involved in that consideration too. But KDADS has generously offered for us to be in an MOU with them for legal services, and we appreciate that from them. In the meanwhile, we're looking for alternative legal services. The amount we're paying to KDADS for this second half of the fiscal year is $40,000. So instead of paying half of the $87,000 the Attorney General had proposed, we essentially have that lowered. So we're paying $40,000 to KDADS in the second half of the fiscal year, and then we paid half of the $87,000 to the Attorney General in the first half of the fiscal year. So just wanted to clarify that. We appreciate KDADS helping us out with this, and we're going to be looking at more of a permanent solution for legal services going forward. And then there's one other item I just wanted to make the committee aware of too. After we had submitted our budget and after the governor's recommendations, we were informed last week that we were approved for some spark funding. We had submitted 2 small bids for modernization improvement projects, and we were approved for a OWL camera for our conference room, totaling about $1,000, and then also replacement of a projector in our boardroom. So between those 2 projects, it's an additional $2,300, which will be reflected in our budget expenditures at the end of probably this fiscal year or next, depending upon when we get access to those federal funds. So I want to make you aware of that because that just happened recently.
Well, thank you, David, and also letting us know that you can live within the parameters of what was given to you, and that makes our recommendation easier too. Do we have any questions for David? Senator Fescoto, and we'll have to be moving on soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is there a deadline to get a permanent contract with someone to?
So our arrangement with KDADS is through the end of this fiscal year, so that would go through the end of June. But we receive separately board counsel legal services and also disciplinary counsel services. So we will be trying to make arrangements for both of those, but we will be trying to finalize an agreement either through contracted services or potentially a hire of a part-time attorney before the end of June.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
if there's no
Yes,
further
Senator
questions,
McGinn.
Thank you. I'd make a motion to move the Behavioral Science Regulatory Board budget for 22 to 25.
So we have our motion. We have a second. Senator Francisco, any discussion? See none. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, David and Dayton, for working with us so fast. Now we have the Office of the State Bank Commissioner, and with research, we have Jennifer Light. Welcome to the committee, Jennifer, for the next two budgets. Thank you.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm here this morning to talk first about the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. The agency ensures the integrity of regulated providers of financial services through responsible and proactive oversight while protecting and educating consumers. The top of page 2 is a fiscal year 2023 highlights. The 2022 legislature approved a budget of $12.6 million, all from special revenue funds, and 110 FTE for fiscal year 23. The agency requests the revised estimate of $13.0 million. This is an increase of just under $300,000. This includes supplemental requests for board member per diem increases, salary increases for the staff, and 2 additional staff positions. The governor recommends $12.7 million. This is an overall decrease of just under $260,000. The governor's recommendation does not include the agency's supplemental requests for board member per diem increases or staff salary increases, but it does include a partial year funding for the 2 FTE positions. Top of page 3 is fiscal year 2024. The agency requests $13.0 million for fiscal year 24. This is an increase of just over $65,000. This includes a continuation of the board member per diems, the staff salary increases, and the 2 additional staff. The governor recommends $13.0 million, which is a decrease of just under $70,000. The governor's recommendation does not include the enhancement request for board member per diem or staff salary increases. It does include just under $160,000 for the full year of 2.0 FTE positions. Top of page 4 is fiscal year 2025. The agency requests $12.9 million for fiscal year 25. This is the decrease of $90,000 below fiscal year 24. The increases include the board member per diem, staff salary increases, and 2 additional staff. There is an anticipated decrease in employer contributions for group health insurance and an increase in contractual service expenditures for fiscal year 2025. The governor recommends $12.9 million for fiscal year 25, which is a decrease of just under $70,000. It does not include the enhancement request for board member per diems increases or staff salary increases. The governor's recommendation does include just under $160,000 for 2 FTE positions. The governor's recommendation for all 3 years includes 112 FTEs, which does include those 2 additional FTE positions. I do want to mention that Commissioner Herndon is on WebEx, and Barbara Albright is in the audience as well. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Very well done. Why don't we see if we have questions with Barbara Albright and David Herndon, who is on WebEx with us. Committee, do you have any questions for any 3? Senator Schellenberger.
Thank you. What is the per diem to be a?
The current per diem, I do not have that information up. I do have that information. 2 seconds.
You have a phone a friend in the
Phone a
back.
friend is
there,
coming
Jennifer.
up. Oh, it is currently $35 per meeting attended. That's in the supplemental enhancement requests on page 15.
And the governor didn't recommend that.
No, the governor did not recommend that. Or the governor did not recommend an increase from that. The 35 is what they're currently getting.
Thank you.
Yes, come on up and identify yourself for our listeners.
Good morning. I am Barb Albright, Director of Finance and Administration with the Bank Commissioner's Office. To answer your question, Senator, there is a special committee that met this summer in the interim, and we included this in hopes that there is an increase done through, my understanding is it has to be through statute. I think Senator McGinn may be able to speak to that as well.
Senator McGinn, and we'll come back to Senator Stephan here on
Actually, I
this.
wanted to ask, that we had that bill last year, and then it didn't go anywhere, is that correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
So somebody said something, I thought, that they were going to tie that in with something else. Do you know anything about that, or does the bill need to be resubmitted?
I'm going to let Senator Francisco.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was a member of the special committee, and we reviewed across a number of boards, and there were widely varying either amounts per diem or whether travel could be charged. And my understanding is that the Appropriations Committee in the House is looking at making that change. And have they, I don't know that they've introduced a bill.
My understanding is it may be discussed this week in the House Appropriations.
Anyway, because of that, I think there is some interest in at least, you know, either making it the same as legislative pay or having it the same for all boards. So because of that, I think it would make sense to add this back into the budget because it's likely they will get approval for some increase.
Senator Stefan, sorry to skip over you.
That's okay, thank you, no problem. Just overarching question here, you know, from actual 22 to 23, we've jumped up $2 million, which is towards 20%. We had an increase in FTEs of 2, which either, maybe they're really well paid, I doubt it. Can you give me just a gestalt of where that $2 million went?
Yes, Madam Chair. Senator, the increase is anticipated cost for TEFIs, the Technology-Enabled Fiduciary Financial Institution. That was a new law put in a couple years ago. We have had to already acquire outside counsel to help us with that. It's a whole different skill set, if you will. So right now, we are also, they just completed the first, not even completed, they're in the process of the first examination of the one company that is a TEFI, and we are currently looking for forensics accountants because of the complexity of the TEFI bill and this company. And so that is budgeted, that was budgeted by the legislature so that we would have the expenses, if we needed them, to hire outside services. So, but it also, and then.
Yes, go ahead.
So would it be safe to assume that we're running a deficit on the TEFI program at this point in time?
No, sir, they paid $1 million to Department of Commerce, got $250,000 of that, and the Bank Commissioner's Office got $750,000 just for that program. So we are not in the red at all at this point. And we did not assess them this year because we still had funds from when they got their charter.
Let's see, do we have any other questions, committee? I think in the interest of time, Senator Francisco.
I would be happy to make a motion.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
I would make a motion that we approve the budgets for the Office of the State Bank Commissioner for FY 2022 through 25 with adjustments in 2024 and 2025 to add in the enhancement for the board members, understanding that that enhancement could not be paid unless the statutory limit is changed.
So we have a motion. So a motion from Senator Francisco, a second from Senator McGinn, and then discussion, Senator McGinn.
So how soon do you think that that'll happen, during the session?
My guess is that it would happen during the session, and so then this would be, it would likely start July 1st of.
But generally what we do is when bills pass in policy committees or even in the budget committee, a bill, once the bill is passed, then we have a reconciliation bill at the end. And that reconciles all this.
But this is what would give the agency the ability to make the expenditure. Is that going to be reconciled? Because it's not in, I mean, if the statute changes and they don't have the money in their budget to add the per diem, how could they do that? That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to give them the flexibility in their budget in case the statute changes. But the statutes are reconciled with themselves, not with the budgets that we've passed for agencies.
Statutes are reconciled at the end of the session.
They are, but this budget is not a statute, so it's not going to be part of reconciliation. This Does that make sense?
Okay, do we have Senator Fascido?
So just for clarification, Madam Chair, Senator Francisco, does this include the per diem?
This includes the allowance for the per diem in the budget. If we change the statutes, they would be able to pay that additional money. So this just gives them the flexibility if we change the statutes. If we don't change the statutes, they're still going to be limited to the $35. We're not changing how much they can pay. We're only changing how much is budgeted.
Yes, very good clarification, Senator McGinn, or Senator Francisco. So we have a motion, a second, we have discussion. Let's vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. All right, motion carries.
Can I ask a clarifying question? The adjustments are in 24 and 25 only, not 23 as well. Is that correct?
That's correct, because I'm guessing it's not going to go into effect.
Thank you for the clarification on that.
Thank you, and thank you, Jennifer, and you're back up now. Kansas Department of Credit Unions.
And Jennifer, I'd like to have that clarification when this is presented in the budget.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So you go right ahead, Jennifer, and we're a few minutes late, so go as.
Julie Murray is here from the agency. She does not have any testimony, but she is here to stand for questions at the end. So the 2022 legislature approved a budget of this is the Kansas Department of Credit Unions. The 2022 legislature approved a budget of $1.3 million, all from the Credit Union Fee Fund, and 12.0 FTEs for the agency in fiscal year 2023. Top of page 2, the agency submits a revised estimate of $1.3 million, all from the Credit Union Fee Fund. This is not an overall change. It does have some shifts, which include an increase in salaries and wages, a decrease in contractual services, and an increase in capital outlay to replace one vehicle. The governor concurs with the agency's fiscal year 2023 revised estimate. Bottom of page 2 is fiscal year 2024. The agency requests $1.3 million for fiscal year 24. This is an increase of just over $1,000 above fiscal year 2023. The increase is for merit-based salary for unclassified employees, which is offset by eliminating classified temporary employees. The governor recommends $1.3 million, all from the Credit Union Fee Fund for fiscal year 24. This is the decrease of just under $45,000. It does not include the agency's enhancement request for the merit-based increases in salaries and wages. Middle of page 3 is fiscal year 25. The agency requests $1.3 million. This is an increase of just over $4,000. It includes an additional $4,000 in salaries and wages, as well as then the continuation of the merit-based salary increases. The governor recommends $1.3 million, which is a decrease of just over $46,000. The recommendation does not include the agency's request for merit-based increases. The agency requests 12.0 FTE for all 3 years, and the governor concurs. With that, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. That was very thorough. Do we have questions for Jennifer, committee? And then, as you mentioned, we have Julie Murray here, the administrator, Kansas Department of Credit Unions. If we have any questions, there's no written testimony. Any questions for either gals? Senator Schallenberger.
How many state chartered credit unions do we have?
We currently have 50 state chartered credit unions and one corporate credit union that are under the agency supervision.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Oh, I'm so sorry, Senator Stephan. Go right ahead.
Ashley, thank you. Again, I want to point out this from actual 2022 to 23, we're looking at nearly another 20% escalation in funding. It's a recurring theme at this point.
Yes, there is about a $200,000 increase in salaries and wages from fiscal year 2022 actuals to the agency's fiscal year 2023 request. I believe that has to do with the. I can answer that. Oh, Julie can answer the question. So
come on up, Julie. Julie Murray.
The answer is actually we've spent the last couple of years significantly understaffed. So our FTE includes like 8 staffers that are examiners, and we've struggled filling those positions. We are currently now at 5. We just hired another individual. So what has happened over the last couple of years is a lot of turnover. So you'll see us getting close to staffing and losing staffing, and that's the difference.
Go ahead.
Your FTE positions have remained.
We want to fill to 12 FTEs, but we're having difficulty with that. It's a difficult position to fill, and the private sector pays quite a bit more for the same type of person.
When you have 12, you're getting the money for them whether they're filled or not, right?
We get the money for them, that we have a surplus in our, we haven't spent all of the money. There's a surplus in the budget, or in the fund.
What is your cash on hand?
What is our cash on hand? If you, go ahead.
So page 5 has the credit union fee fund, which is where they get their money from. As you can see, we have fiscal years 20, 21, and 22, and then the GovRec for 23, 24, 25. They're getting in about 1.1 million with an expenditures of 1.1 million in 22, and they had an ending balance of just over 780,000.
And just so you don't think I'm greedy, what we did this last time around is we actually reduced our fees to the credit union. We did a one-time reduction so that we'll take that balance down a little bit, just to align with the NASCA's recommendations.
I would like to go on the record saying I do not think you're greedy.
Thank you.
I don't know that anyone's ever heard that word in this building. So, is it Senator Francisco?
I just would, wonder if you can comment, were raises available to the staff, even though they weren't merit-based? Or does the governor's denial of those merit-based increases mean that there are no raises for staff?
At this point, the only raises I'll be able to do are through promotion. We did have a couple of individuals that were eligible for that. It was well-deserved. Right now, the timing is okay because I have 2 new staff members that are working through the process of training. And so once they get through that, I may be able to do it through promotion as long as the funds are available.
But they didn't receive a 5% increase last year.
When the governor ordered it, we did follow.
Madam Chair, if there's no further questions, I move that we adopt the Kansas Department of Credit Unions budget for 22 to 25.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second, Senator Francisco. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Thank you. I do want to say one more thing. The KLRD did release the interim committee reports, which does include the interim committee on staff salaries and enhancements for it. So there, you should all have that. If you don't, I'd be happy to get that for you.
Thank you very much. Nice job, and we are right on time with your budgets there. And thank you for joining us, Julie, if she's still in the, thank you. All right, so next we have Luke Drury with research. He has the next 4 budgets. So we'll see how we do on your time, Luke. So the first budget is the Kansas Dental Board. So welcome to the committee, Luke.
Morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Luke Drury, and I will be going over the next 4 budgets with you all. You should have these budget analysis in front of you. I would note that Lane Hemsley, the executive director of the board, is here in committee today and can answer any questions that you all may have. I will just start the presentation on page number 5. For a note for you all, there is an examination of revenues and expenditures from the dental board's fee fund over time, along with ending balances. Additionally, there's a table there that shows what the current fees are that are being charged to licensees, and then the statutory limit. If we move over, though, onto page number 6, we'll get into some of the more harder numbers for the agency's request. So we start off with the 2022 legislature, what was approved. The legislature approved $425,688 for the dental board fee fund, and there were no changes to that subsequent to the 2022 legislature. The agency submits a budget that is equal to that approved amount, that is to say $425,688. There were some changes within expenditure categories, but overall, the agency's budget request remains the same. The governor concurs with the agency's request for FY 2023. Madam Chair, should I continue on?
Yes, you go right ahead.
Absolutely. Then if we move on then onto page number 8, we'll get into the FY 2024 analysis. We start with the agency's revised request from FY 2023. That number is $425,688.03 FTE. The agency submits a submits a budget request of $560,000, all from the Dental Board Fee Fund. And these are increases that you can see on the table there, along with down below. Item number 1, the agency requests an additional $130,000, all from special revenue funds, to upgrade the agency's licensing system. Currently, they indicate that that licensing system is on Microsoft Access and is no longer supported, and they are looking to upgrade that licensing system. Item number 2 is changes to group health and hospitalization. This is to say that the agency is estimating increased employer contributions for group health insurance in FY 2024, totaling $3,163. All other adjustments is item number 3. These are some of the rats and cats different expenditures that the agency is estimating. That totals $1,149. Some of these include state building operating charge, posted communications, freight, official hospitality, and this is partially offset by other estimates within the agency's budget. For FY 2024, the governor recommends no changes to the agency's request. Moving on to page number 9 is the FY 2025 analysis. Again, we start with the 2024 request. That number was $560,000. The agency for 2025 is estimating $565,000, again, all from the Dental Board Fee Fund. For 2025, item number 1, the agency is anticipating increased expenditures of $3,781 for contractual services, and this is primarily attributable to in-state travel and the state building capital charge. Item number 2, the agency is estimating increased expenditures for commodities, and this is related to stationery and other office supplies. And then item number 3, an adjustment of $219 in salaries and wages, again, contributions to fringe benefit rates. The governor recommends no changes to the agency's 2025 request. At the end of the documentation here, you also have agency performance measures on the back for you all to reference should you want to. Madam Chair, I will be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Luke. Very nice job. That's the, I did. Lane is here for questions, so we know if the committee has any questions for either fellow. Do we have questions for Luke?
Madam Chair, if there's not any questions, I make a motion to move the Kansas Dental Board 2022 to 2025 budget to Ways and Means.
So I have a motion and second, Senator Francisco. Do we have any discussion? Don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Lane. Very nice job. And you saved 1:30 seconds. So our next budget is Kansas State Board of Mortuary Arts and Luke Drury from Research again. And I see we have J.W. Carey, the Executive Secretary, in person to testify as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, the State Board of Mortuary Arts. If we turn to page number 5, similar with the Dental Board, we have an examination of the Mortuary Arts Fee Fund, and then the revenues, expenditures, and balances over time. Additionally, the table below shows you what the current fees are charged by the board and what their statutory limits are. We will get into the numbers on page number 6. For the FY 2023 analysis, again, we start with the legislative approved amount. That number was $317,670.03 FTEs. There were no changes subsequent to the 2022 session. The agency submits a revised estimate that equals the agency's approved amount. Here you do see in the table above there were some changes within expenditure categories. That includes some increased estimates for salaries and wages, along with decreased estimates for rents, office supplies, a computer replacement, and other adjustments. The governor recommends no changes to the agency's FY 2023 revised estimate. Moving on to page number 8, we have the 2024 analysis. Again, we start with the 2023 revised estimate from the agency. That number was $317,760. The agency's request for 2024 totals $322,934. And as you can see above in the table, here's what it is related to. Item number 1, group health insurance. The agency requests the addition of $2,592 for employer contributions to group health insurance in FY 2024. Item number 2, computer replacement. Add $1,000 for a computer replacement in 2024. $1,000 for travel and subsistence, and then all other adjustments are $672. And the governor recommends no changes to the agency's FY 2024 request. Moving on to page number 9 is the 2025 analysis. Looking at the top of the table there, that is the agency's request for FY 2024. From there, the agency has requested a budget of $324,494 with 3 different adjustments included. Item number 1, an increase of $1,000 over 2024 to 2025 for travel and subsistence. Item number 2, fuel, $1,000 for anticipated increases in gasoline costs. And then item number 3, the rats and cats, all their adjustments, reduces by $440. Again, the governor recommends no changes to the agency's request for FY 2025. Similar to the dental board, the back of the budget analysis does include agency performance measures as they are reported to legislative research. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Let's see, why don't we have JW come up? And he had his testimony in front of us. And if you hit some of your highlights there, JW, and then we'll ask you questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm JW Carey. I'm the Executive Secretary of the Kansas State Board of Mortuary Arts, and agreeing with time, I'll move on rather quickly. We have 5 board members. 3 of our board members are licensees, and 2 of our board members are consumer members. The mission of the Kansas State Board of Mortuary Art is to ensure that licensees perform their professional services in the manner providing maximum protection of the health and safety and welfare of the people of Kansas. And our philosophy is to act in accordance with the highest standards of ethics and accountability, efficiency, and openness. Luke pretty well covered what our requests are for all the years, and with that, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Very nice job. Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, JW. During the outbreak of COVID, I heard from some of the mortuaries in my city that regarding receiving COVID vaccines. So did you ever consider them or put them in a list of essential workers yet?
They were considered essential workers. Even, but see, I think that was handled through membership, which would have been the Kansas Funeral Directors Association. They pretty much took care of that. I call that membership in the aspect is most funeral directors are members of the KFDA. We as a regulatory board don't really have that ability to make that priority.
Any other questions? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the fee fund fees that you're charging, but note that you're gradually spending a little more than you're taking in. Again, you are pretty close to managing those fees in an appropriate way. So do you have plans?
Yes, ma'am. This has been quite a bit of discussion. What we have done, I have been here for about 2.5 years. The previous executive secretary was here for 40. Our fees have not been raised since 2006. But we are well within our statutory maximums, and my goal is to have something done by the start of the fiscal year, next fiscal year.
So I hope you can do that or make a change about the Office of the Attorney General providing your legal fees.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't see any other questions. Would you have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Senator McGinn.
You do pay high fees considering the other, being a doctor and everything else.
Excuse me, I didn't.
You have very high fees.
Oh.
I mean, but I guess you just don't want anybody doing that job, so Anyway, Madam Chair, I make a motion to move the Kansas State Board of Mortuary Arts for years 22 to 25 out of committee and to the Ways and Means Committee as approved.
Say a motion, and Senator Fasquedo seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Our next one, we have two more left, and we have about 15 minutes. Here, Luke, Board of Veterinarian Examiners. So from research, Luke Drury again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Luke Drury, going over the Board of Veterinary Examiners. I would also note that Mark Olson, the Executive Director from the agency, is here and can answer questions that you all may have. Similar to the last two budgets, I want to start on page number 4. Again, this is an examination of revenues and expenditures from the veterinary examiner's fee fund over time. Additionally, with that, there is a table there that shows what the current fees are charged by the board and what their statutory limits are. We'll get into the numbers on page number 5. The FY 2023 analysis, we start with the approved amount from FY 2022 legislature. That amount was $363,270 and 3.8 FTE. The agency submits a budget that is equal to that amount that was approved by the legislature with no changes, and the governor recommends no changes to the agency's FY 2023 revised estimate. Moving on to page number 7 is the 2024 analysis. Again, we take the agency's revised estimate from 2023 and go from there. That number was $363,270 and 3.8 FTE. And then the agency request does include some additional expenditures. Item number 1, the agency is requesting or is estimating increased expenditures for fringe benefit rates, specifically for group health insurance, totaling $3,933. Increased costs for attorney fees totaling $1,000. All other adjustments include $309. The agency's request is $368,512, and the governor recommends no changes to the FY 2024 agency request. Moving on to page number 8 is the FY 2025 analysis, again starting with the agency's 2024 request, and that number was $368,512. The agency for 25 is estimating expenditures totaling $373,203 and 3.8 FTE. And there are a number of changes, items 1 through 3. Item number 1, the agency is estimating increased expenditure for rents. Item number 2, increased expenditures for attorney fees, and then all other adjustments that span various different expenditure categories total $1,991. Again, for FY 2025, the governor recommends no changes to the agency's request. Similar with the last two budgets as well. The last two pages does show agency performance measures as submitted by the agency to legislative research. With that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, Luke, why don't we bring up Mark Olson, the Executive Director, and we have your written testimony, so if you want to hit the highlights, and you and Luke can answer questions if the committee has any. So,
Madam Chair,
welcome.
thank you very much, members of the committee. I'm Mark Olson. I'm the Executive Director for the Board of Veterinary Examiners, and this is the Senate Transparency and Ethics Committee, and the Board of Veterinary Examiners is very transparent with everything that we do in our office as we possibly can, and so we appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. Our job is to promote public health, safety, and welfare relative to the practice of veterinary medicine, which is indeed a privilege granted to persons possessing the appropriate personal and professional qualifications specified in the Kansas Veterinary Practice Act. The board is reviewing the whole Practice Act, and we have lids on some of our fees, and we have a task force with the association that we will be introducing legislation next year to update our Practice Act, which will also help us in regards to budgeting, and the association understands that we haven't done that for some time. The Board of Veterinary Examiners was established by the Kansas Legislature before you were here in 1907. And so we license veterinarians, we register veterinary technicians, we take care of all the premise registrations of veterinary facilities as well as those that travel around in their vehicles. And then obviously we protect the public in regards to fraud or negligent practice by consumer complaints. So, Madam Chair, I will answer questions. On the back sheet, it talks about the number of licenses that we have and the number of membership.
Thank you. That is very helpful information and fascinating. 1907, very long time ago. Do we have questions for Senator Vascado?
Madam Chair, no question, actually, just to tell this gentleman, you have the best voice ever.
That was gifted to me. I have nothing to do with that.
So maybe radio should have been in your background. Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you growing any of the large animal veterinarians?
The large animal veterinarians, there was a bill that went through last year to allow more in-state veterinary students to stay within Kansas and help offset their cost. There has been a real push by the veterinary school, by the association, and to target where the underserved areas are. As all of us know, there is a workforce concern about people that want to go to work. And that's a different question. But to answer your question, yes, it is being addressed. And I believe in Kansas, we are getting better.
Well, I think the small animal docs, they go to work because they make a lot of money when you compare it to coming to my farm and working on anything.
Well, and the challenge of that is we're getting feedback from the AVMA, the National Association, as well as from the KVMA, that we don't have veterinarians that want to work full time. So it takes sometimes in some areas twice as many veterinarians to cover the full week's worth of work, and which is different from years ago where we worked full time. So that creates a bigger number situation. That doesn't have anything to do with what you folks do. That's an issue that needs to be dealt with within our profession.
Madam Chair, if there's no further questions, I will move the Board of Veterinarian Examiners budget of 22 to 25 out of committee and to the Ways and Means Committee.
Oh, we have a motion. Senator Schellenbarger seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you for being with us, Mark, and very nice testimony. Very nice. All right, Luke, last one, Board of Examiners in Optometry. And we also have in person to testify Jan Murray. So you can bring it home now, Luke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, similar with the other agencies that we went through this morning, I will start off on page number 4. On page number 4 is an examination of the optometry fee fund, which is revenues and expenditures along with ending balances over time. I would note as well that for this particular budget, for FY 2024, the agency has requested a transfer of $93,000 from the optometry litigation fund to the optometry operating fund. You can see that represented in the chart there for FY 2024. The optometry litigation fund is a fund that the agency sets aside. It's not used on a regular basis. It's used in the event of increased enforcement activities that require increased expenditures from attorney costs, and if they cannot cover that within their expenditure limitation on the optometry fee fund, they can request to tap into that fund to the director of the budget. Upon approval, they can then use that. So there is some money in there, and the agency is requesting to do a funds transfer. It would also be noted, I would also note there have not been expenditures from the optometry litigation fund from 2020, 2021, or 2022. Again, that's a fund that is rarely used by the agency. In addition to this, you also see here the license fees in the table below, what their current fee is along with their statutory limit. Moving on, onto page number 5 is an examination of the 2023 budget request. Again, we start with the amount that was approved by the legislature in 2022. That number is $202,514.01 FTE. There were no changes subsequent to the 2022 session. The agency submits a budget that is equal to that approved amount. Again, some changes within expenditure categories, but overall expenditures remain the same. The governor recommends no changes to the agency's request for 2023. Moving on, onto page number 7 is a look at the 2024 analysis. Again, we'll start with the agency's revised estimate for FY 2023. That number is $202,514.01 FTE. The agency is estimating some increases to expenditures, as can be seen below. Item number 1 is for contractual services. The agency overall is anticipating increases in contractual services of $5,579, and the increase is primarily attributable to computer programming services and is partially offset by reduced estimates for attorney fees. Item number 2 is the all other adjustments. That is $165, and these are increases for salaries and wages in 2024 as compared to FY 2023. The governor recommends no changes to the agency's requests for FY 2024. Moving on onto page number 8. The 2025 analysis, again, taking the agency's request for 2024, which is $208,258 and 1 FTE. The agency does include several changes. Item number 1, enhancement for a new FTE position. The agency has requested $34,456, all from special revenue funds, and 1 FTE position, and to allow the agency to hire another executive officer in 2025. It is currently noted by the agency that the current executive officer is estimating to retire in fiscal year 2025, and so therefore the agency is requesting expenditures and an FTE to bring somebody on to allow a new executive officer to train with the current executive officer for 6 months. Item number 2, the agency is estimating increased expenditures for attorneys and lawyers, totaling $5,000 in 2025. All other adjustments result in net reductions of $890, and this is primarily attributable to reduced estimates for employer contributions to Medicare. The governor does not recommend the agency's enhancement request of $34,456 and 1 FTE. Instead, the governor is recommending $212,368 and 1 FTE position in 2025. Madam Chair, I would also note, again, similar with the other budgets, at the end of the budget here are agency performance measures as they are submitted to legislative research, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions should the committee have any.
Okay, thank you, Luke. I think we'll bring up Jan Murray. Very limited time that we have to get to our next committee. Jan, would you like to speak to us for a few minutes? And I think particularly you might want to focus on 2025.
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to start there? That's your...
I'll be very brief. My agency is a very small agency. It consists of a 5-member board, 4 optometrists, and 1 public member, and then there's me, and I'm the only one in the office. And so I am requesting the $34,000 to be able to hire somebody that I can train for 6 months. The board has kind of requested this also, and so they can take over completely when I'm gone and still be an office of 1. When I started in 2011, I worked with the previous executive director or officer for 6 months, and it's very cyclic what we do. And starting renewals are March through May 31st, and then June, July, we have the exam and then the budget. And so I need somebody that can start so I can show them all these little steps, and then hopefully the rest of the year they can kind of figure out their way. But the big part is getting through renewals, unless I can get the statutory to change from renewals ending May 31st. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jan. I knew from Luke that this might be a situation we wanted to chat about. Senator McGinn.
So once they're trained, will you be coming back at some point in time and dropping that person off?
No.
No, you're going to keep it.
No. Once they are trained, then I'm out the door. Yeah.
Right, but I guess, so is it 1 or 2? Because
It'll just be 1 person. It'll be 2 while we're training. Once they're fully trained and comfortable with it, then I'm retired and out the door, and they're on their own.
Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't really have a question, but here's another fee fund where we establish a fee, we collect the money, and we don't perform any particular service other than keeping a board paid and an executive director. And I wonder if we shouldn't consolidate some of these or do away with it. Thanks.
And perhaps that's a topic for the big committee as well, Senator Schallenberger.
I'll bring it up to the next committee, but I'd make a motion to deny the governor's request on her not recommending the request from the agency about the FTE.
And then approve the 2 years.
In a second.
Okay. There's a motion from Senator McGinn, second from question, Senator Francisco.
I do second that, but I know that there has been another analysis where we saw the funding go up and then come back down for the very same reason, to allow for training. So I think this is consistent with what we've done.
Any more discussion? So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Very nice job. Oh,
This time,
oh,
now
Luke,
make a
do you?
motion.
Oh, okay.
We have to make a motion to kick it out. Is that why you're raising your hand?
Quick, Madam Chair, thank you. Quick question, just to make sure that I'm understanding that the movement would be to add the agency's enhancement request in 2025? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's one, yes.
Now I make a motion to move the Board of Examiners in optometry from 22 to 25's budget out of committee into the Ways and Means Committee.
So we have a motion, second from Senator Francisco, discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Very nice job, everyone. And we do have a meeting next Wednesday on a bill. So see you next Wednesday, everyone. We're adjourned.